Oh, hello there, yes. Midweekish, I guess-ish. Anyway, today I wanted to sort of do a bit of a deeper dive into what's become a huge story over the last sort of 3 days. And it sort of encompasses almost everything that is intrinsically appalling about the British media at the moment, but also all of the things that are intrinsically appalling about the British right and their influence on the media. So let's dive into a bit of GB News from yesterday. It contains my favourite line, which is soft-core bondage porn for kids. And I don't know, that just makes me smile. Let's dive into this. Patrick Christie's and everyone's favourite everyone's favourite big G, one might say, Darren Grimes. Let's go.
Parents in Hull have felt forced to remove their 4-year-old daughter from her preschool after they made a complaint about a book featuring cartoons of men in bondage and top surgery scars, which is basically a double mastectomy. And the school doubled down. It refused to apologise. So Will and Maria Taylor from Hull found the images in a copy of Grandad's Pride, a book which is marked appropriate, believe it or not, for 4+. Since the incident, the trustees have confirmed the removal of the book, and GB News has made several phone calls to the school, though none have been answered. Darren Grimes joins me now, GB News presenter. Darren, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. 4-year-olds looking at pictures of granddads in bondage and LGBT top scars and all of this. What's going on?
I have absolutely no pride, Patrick, in the exposure to these kinds of themes for children, infants. Because, Patrick, if you ask me, right, this all explains why support for same-sex relationships could actually be starting to show seeds of decline, because children, rightly, and I'm sure many viewers agree with this, children are a red line for the nation. And I'm afraid to say, Patrick, that that particular tripwire has been well and truly crossed many times now with the issues of sex, with gender, sexual preferences, and actually it's just downright ideology that's been allowed to seep into our schools under a Conservative government. I find it frankly baffling that this particular case is especially egregious, as you've just pointed out, with this book showing half-naked men in bondage gear playing tonsil tennis, you know, and parents asked if they're happy for this to be shown to 4-year-olds. No parent in their right mind would think that this was appropriate material to show to a 4-year-old. I mean, 4-year-olds, correct me if I'm wrong here, should be exposed to reading and writing and Peppa Pig, not bondage, bottomless chaps and BDSM. I mean, it's utterly cartoon. What's next? Peppa Pig wearing nipple tassels and a whip for children's entertainment? You know, it's just, it's. I would go as far as to say that it's perversion. The idea that you want children to be exposed to these themes so early on. Who in their right mind would do that? There needs to be seconds at this school, if they'll ever answer our calls, Patrick.
Well, yes, there you have it. It's official. Darren Grimes has no pride. Odd that he describes certain things as a perversion. He is the token gay person on GB News. But as ever, he's quite happy to throw people under the bus. It must be fun for the school to be fielding telephone calls, and I would imagine there's some reporters outside to try and make sure that this story runs and runs. There are a number of issues, believe it or not, that I have with this particular story and the way it's being presented. The foremost of which, basically, is the notion that if you show a 4-year-old something, that they will look at it through adult eyes. I don't think that's necessarily true at all. We'll come back to that one, but let's just carry on with the interview, shall we?
A world of difference between not being aggressively homophobic towards children and therefore raising them to be aggressive homophobes. There's a world of difference between, as and when the age is appropriate in sexual education classes, explaining to them that there are different ways for people to love each other and that is all okay. But what could the possible justification be for showing 4-year-olds pictures of a grandad kissing another man in bondage gear or someone with those scars. You said there it borders on perverted. I would have thought that if someone approached most schools and said, do you want to show this book to your kids, that would be the kind of thing you'd call the police over.
Absolutely, and it's baffling to me, Patrick, that only one parent that we know of at least removed their child from the school after being presented with that book and being asked whether or not it was okay. Because, Patrick, I think the problem here is that the other parents will be far too terrified to actually say that they find it, frankly, disgusting to show to children for fear of being accused of homophobia, transphobia, or whatever other ism and phobia is floating around these days, simply for caring about child safeguarding and age-appropriate content, which should be the absolute paramount importance to any school in any moment of time. And this all comes at a time when GBNews has been reporting today on the music labels dropping classics like Queen's Fat-Bottomed Girls, right, for fear of offending modern audiences, and presumably, Patrick, for offending women with big behinds. But at the same time, activists and ideologues are more than happy to push this kind of content onto children. So we're saying that Queen's music isn't appropriate, but we are saying that the kinds of images that were being presented on screen right now of people necking on with each other wearing bondage gear is totally fine for
surrounded
children.
by kids as well. It's that picture, Darren. I want to leave that on the screen for a second, if that's all right, because that picture, I think, basically says it all, doesn't it? You know, you've got Grandad's pride there, you know, someone who looks like a granddad in that kind of bondage gear attire, kissing somebody else, surrounded by children who are all cheering it on, saying trans rights now, love is love is love. And I just find that, I really do find that very concerning, that, you know, anyone would think that that was appropriate. And that I just wonder, it feels to me a little bit like kind of, almost like the legalisation of soft-core bondage porn for kids.
Yes, soft-core bondage porn for kids. I still love that phrase. I can't get over it. Oh, dear God. Anyway, leaving that aside. Yes, so many different things thrown at that. It really is a mud against the wall thing. A lot of the right have hated the fact that gay marriage was legalised under David Cameron. They still hate him for it. Just that one particular thing. Everything else he did was absolutely fine, of course, you know, which leads us neatly to where we are today, obviously. But there is so much in there. There is so much in there about the modern media and the modern right wing. Yeah, okay, first of all, Darren, this notion that only one parent, and we'll come back to the parent a bit later on, but only one parent complained because the others are too scared to, yeah. There's always a moral majority. You can never find them, and newspapers will have gone out of their way to try and find some, but I haven't seen anything in the last 3 days from any other parent about this. And the notion that schools need to be invested in safeguarding. I'm just going to hazard a wild guess that the school involved actually is quite heavily invested, in a way that Darren Grimes and GBNews et al. Aren't, yes? Also, notice the whole way that every other story they can grab hold of gets sort of shoved in with this. So, for example, the fact that music executives, or perhaps Queen themselves, presumably Queen themselves because they're a big band, have decided not to play Fat-Bottomed Girls, this also becomes symptomatic of something man in leather. I don't understand how that works. Do music execs also run schools? Or are they the same cabal of woke activists? Aha, yes, that's the one, isn't it? That's the way the world works now. There's a whole cabal of people, from Queen, presumably themselves, to individual libraries in schools, librarians in schools that are manipulating you. Anyway, let's have a closer dive actually into this story itself. So let's start off about 3 days ago with the Daily Mail. Exclusive, yeah. Yes, so the headline is Bondage Gear in Book for 3-year-olds. I think it was 4+. But anyway, publisher accuses parents of homophobia over objections to LGBT title Grandad's Pride that features sexual fetishes and trans top surgery. Yes, it's an exclusive. Book publishers have blasted criticism as homophobic. In one section of the book, two men in leather fetish gear are seen kissing. Now, if you sort of do a Google News search, the first page is this, followed by this, followed by this. And whenever you hear stories in the media about a particular line being pushed, you could possibly point people to that particular thing. Various news outlets have picked this up. Totally unquestioning. But it's worthwhile, actually, as ever, with the Daily Mail, diving in slightly. And again, I will come back to the images of the book because I have various comments to make about that. But let's just get some choice quotes here. A member of staff defended the images, arguing children would not understand the sexualised nature of the pictures. The tailors, the couple involved, claimed a child's lack of understanding does not exonerate staff for showing pupils the book. And there's the, if you like, for as far as I'm concerned, the nexus, the rub of the matter, in the sense that one has to say, okay then, so the parents accept that children won't understand what they see, so what they're doing is they're taking an adult's understanding and applying it to children, and therefore saying, because I don't like it, I don't want it to be shown to a child. And to a certain extent, one might argue, well, that's fine. However, it becomes, once you sort of start dipping your toe in that water, you end up with problems. And again, we'll come back to that. Let's carry on. The Book Trust, which promotes children's reading, has already warned parents the illustrations in Grandad's Pride include realistic depictions of what a Pride March might look like, including a person dressed in adult leather wear and some images which are culturally sensitive. Yes, so in essence, the book comes with its own trigger warning for parents that need trigger warning. Yeah, snowflakes perhaps that they are, I don't know. The tailors actually come out of this as reasonable human beings that have got somewhat tied up in the right-wing media sphere. But anyway, leaving that aside, parents and carers should read the book before sharing, which is perhaps an ideal thing to suggest. And I'm sure the school has other books which would be very, very similar. Anyway, just to move on, Mrs. Taylor accepted a member of staff would check whether she was okay with the contents, but she did not notice the images at first. Yes, indeed. And yeah, okay. She, I don't know, was expecting something else maybe. The parents in the story don't come across as particularly homophobic or anything else. As I say, they just seem like a bit like rabbits caught in the headlight. But this is where we get to the real problem in the issue, which is what exactly can you show to a child which won't have any effect on them? Let's look at some of the pictures here. Well, we start off with the cover of the book, and I've been able to get this, if you like, from Amazon, so those are the images I'm working on. I don't know the particular pages that GBNews and the Mail et al. Are using. But if we just look at the front cover, it's fairly innocuous, but at the same time, anybody with a vague understanding would perhaps suggest, it's just largely pointing in the right direction as to what's going to be there. The book contains a large number of panoramas, as far as I can make out, like this page here, and it does, if you want to be very selective about it, have some more close-up images. So, for example, here's a sort of archetypal Pride Parade leather queen, one might say. Yeah? Now, you need to kind of be getting out the magnifying glass to a certain extent. If you want to be offended by that, you can be. But let's face it, what 4-year-old is going to be in any way, shape or form affected by that? Let's have a look at some other images from children's books, just to make my point here. Yes, so I did I thought, well, let's have a look at a sort of standard illustration for Three Billy Goats Gruff, which is a story which has entertained 4-year-olds for I don't know, certainly over 100 years. And here we have a rather charming illustration with a kind of slightly scary, kind of gruffalo-y looking troll under the bridge with the goats above him. However, if we selectively take out part of the picture, we can see that there are skulls and bones of dead goats, which presumably the troll has eaten. And I'm very worried about this, because obviously if we show this, using GBNews' logic, if we show this to children, they will become inflamed with a bloodlust and want to go around killing animals, because that's the picture. Yeah. And I'm reminded a while ago in one of my videos, I said that one of my favourite books was Spot Goes to the Park. Actually, the book I was thinking of was Spot Goes to the Woods, and it's where Spot the dog, who's a beloved children's character, often your type of thing you'd read to a very small child, possibly about 2. Anyway, in Spot Goes to the Woods, he meets a series of delightful animals and asks them whether or not there are lions and tigers and bears in the woods, to which they assure him that there are. However, he can't see any until right at the end, when we do see that there are lions and tigers and bears and an elephant. Oh my. And what kind of impression will this give to impressionable 4-year-olds? This is the question. Will 4-year-olds immediately think that in fact parks are full of ravenous animals? And the answer is no, because you'd have to be a blindingly stupid human being to even think like that. However, in the nice binary media world that there is at GBNews et al., that's what you get. So they will earnestly believe that to be true, except, once again, they would say, oh, no, children aren't affected by that kind of thing. They're just simply affected by other things in ways that we don't know. Yes. And, just to sort of try and bring this stuff together, I was reminded of the American teacher who was fired because she showed a group of, I think, 9-year-olds, or 7-year-olds, something like that. Anyway, a picture of Michelangelo, which was deemed to be pornographic simply because it was a naked male. Now, we can, if you want, if you feel that children need to be protected, then you really do have to go the whole hog. Because the problem with your Darren Grimeses and your GBNewses and your Daily Mails is they are very, very picky about what they want to protect children from. Protect is in inverted commas, obviously. And their narrative will mean that they will pick up on certain things. The problem, of course, is that you can never keep them happy. They will always sit there with a magnifying glass and a book and decide that on behalf of 4-year-olds that they don't understand in any shape or form, just use that lovely phrase, that they will become angry at it. And this is the whole sort of evangelical Christian thing that we're starting to get in this country, whereby the media will quite happily take up any particular bigoted concern, usually by Christian parents, about anything. Yeah? Now, you might argue, well, we have to show children things at an appropriate age. Well, the question is, what age is it appropriate? At what age is it appropriate to show a child a picture of dismembered goats? At what age can we accept that they can enter the child's world? The reason I love Spot in the Woods is because it sees the world from a children's viewpoint. We love that notion of the monsters under the bed. Oh no, we can't say that because that will scare the children. But we're not talking about children, are we? That's the issue. We're talking about the adults and what scares them, or indeed what they can utilise. Because we mustn't talk about all the other things that are important in the world. We need to talk about a small part of a picture which shows somebody who has a particular lifestyle. And do people honestly think that if we can magically enter a world where we get rid of all of this stuff, that Darren Grimes won't exist? I don't know. On one level, it might be worth it, just for that idea, that we can get rid of all of the Darren Grimes in the world. Won't that be joyful? Anyway, do have a lovely Wednesday. Yeah.